We live in a world that is loud with advice and crowded with opinions, and yet strangely quiet when it comes to truth. Everywhere you turn, someone is telling you what you should want, what you should chase, what success is supposed to look like. Numbers, titles, recognition, growth curves, applause. And if you're a leader, an entrepreneur, a professional carrying responsibility on your shoulders, the noise gets louder, the pressure multiplies, and over time, something subtle happens. You start living from the outside in, reacting instead of choosing, managing appearances instead of mastering yourself. So let's slow this down, take a breath, because real strength is never frantic. Real discipline never needs to announce itself. And real leadership does not begin in a boardroom, a marketplace, or a public win. It begins in the quiet place where no one is watching. It begins with the way you govern your own inner life. Most people want control over their circumstances. They want the market to cooperate. They want people to behave. They want timing to align and outcomes to reward effort. But inner discipline asks a different question. Not how do I control what's happening, but who am I becoming while this is happening? Because the truth is, you will never fully control the external world, but you are always responsible for the internal one. This is where self-mastery begins, not with motivation, not with intensity, but with honesty. The kind of honesty that looks at your habits, your reactions, your excuses, and doesn't flinch. The kind that says, this is where I am. This is what I've been avoiding. This is where I've been soft when I needed to be steady. Inner strength is built in moments that feel insignificant. Waking up when you don't feel like it. Doing the work without applause. Choosing restraint instead of impulse. Staying composed when pressure invites panic. These moments don't trend online. They don't attract attention, but they build something far more valuable than visibility. They build character, and character is what remains when outcomes fluctuate. If you're leading a business, a team, a family, or even just yourself, you already know this truth, whether you've named it or not. Outcomes are unstable. Markets shift. Plans fail. People disappoint. Momentum comes and goes. If your identity is anchored to outcomes, you will live in a constant state of anxiety. But when your identity is anchored to character, you gain something rare. Steadiness. Steadiness does not mean passivity. It does not mean lack of ambition. It means you are not owned by external pressure. You can pursue excellence without becoming frantic. You can aim high without becoming brittle. You can lose without losing yourself. Purpose is what makes this possible. Not the kind of purpose that sounds impressive in an elevator pitch. Not the kind that's crafted for branding, but a quiet, personal purpose that answers a simple question. Why do I do what I do, even when it's hard, unseen, or unrewarded? Purpose is not about proving anything. It's about alignment. When your actions align with your values, pressure loses its power to destabilize you. You may still feel it. You may still carry weight, but it no longer controls you. Pressure is external. Purpose is internal. Pressure says you need to be more, faster, louder. Purpose says be grounded, be disciplined, be faithful to the work in front of you. Leaders who burn out are often not weak. They are misaligned. They confuse pressure for purpose. They mistake urgency for meaning. And over time, that confusion drains them. But leaders who endure, those who lead with dignity over decades, are those who have done the inner work. They know who they are when the results dip. They know how to stand firm when no one is cheering. Quiet strength is not dramatic. It doesn't seek validation. It doesn't need to win every conversation. It shows up consistently. It listens more than it speaks. It chooses restraint when ego demands reaction. This kind of strength is built through discipline, not punishment. Discipline, the practice of choosing what matters most over what feels easiest. Discipline is how you train your mind to stay with discomfort without escaping into distraction. It's how you learn to keep promises to yourself, especially the small ones. And those small promises matter. They are the bricks of self-trust. Every time you follow through when no one would know if you didn't, you reinforce something deep within you. You become someone you can rely on. And when life gets heavy, and it will, you will need that internal reliability more than any external advantage. Spiritual growth follows the same pattern. It is not built in emotional highs or public declarations. It is formed through consistency, humility, and reflection. Through silence, through listening, through learning how to sit with yourself without needing constant stimulation or affirmation. Spiritual maturity does not remove struggle, it reframes it. Struggle becomes a teacher rather than a threat. Difficulty becomes a refining process rather than a sign of failure. And this matters deeply for professionals under pressure, because leadership exposes what is already inside you. Stress does not create character, it reveals it. When deadlines compress and expectations collide, what surfaces is not who you pretend to be, but who you've trained yourself to be. That training happens daily. It happens in how you speak to yourself when you fall short, in whether you blame circumstances or take responsibility, in whether you numb discomfort or face it with courage, in whether you chase approval or commit to integrity. There is dignity in this path, a quiet dignity that does not depend on recognition, a dignity that says, I am responsible for my effort, my discipline, my response, not in a harsh way, in a grounded way.
This is not about being ruthless with yourself. It's about being honest, compassionate, but uncompromising, understanding but not indulgent. You can acknowledge your limits without surrendering to them. You can honor rest without abandoning discipline. You can be patient with growth without lowering standards. And this balance, this inner alignment, is what makes leadership sustainable. The world does not need more frantic leaders. It needs grounded ones. People who can hold pressure without becoming reactive. People who can make decisions from principle rather than fear. People who are more committed to becoming solid than appearing successful. This is where personal transformation actually happens. Not through reinvention, but through refinement. Not through shortcuts, but through repetition. Not through external control, but through internal governance. And the good news, the hopeful truth, is that this is available to anyone willing to do the work. Not special talent, not perfect conditions, just willingness. Willingness to be uncomfortable, willingness to be consistent, willingness to look inward and take responsibility for what you find there. So wherever you are right now, carrying weight, managing expectations, building something meaningful, remember this: you don't need to dominate the world to lead well. You need to master yourself. You don't need louder motivation. You need quieter discipline. You don't need to escape pressure. You need to be rooted beneath it. Take your time, breathe, choose the next right action, build character before chasing outcomes, let purpose guide effort. Let inner strength do its slow, steady work, and trust that over time this path, quiet, disciplined, dignified, will shape you into someone who can carry responsibility without losing yourself. That is real leadership. That is lasting growth, and it begins again and again within. And as you walk this path, you begin to notice something subtle but powerful. The more you anchor yourself internally, the less you are shaken externally. Challenges still arrive, setbacks still happen, criticism still finds its way to you, but they no longer define your center. They no longer pull you apart. Instead, they pass through you, leaving behind information rather than injury. This is the difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is driven by fear, ego, or urgency. Response is driven by clarity, and clarity only comes when you've spent time learning yourself, when you've watched your patterns closely enough to recognize when old habits want to take over, when you've practiced pausing long enough to choose your direction rather than being pushed into it. For leaders and professionals under constant demand, this pause is not a luxury. It is a discipline. It is the space where wisdom enters. Without it, even the most talented person becomes exhausted, brittle, and eventually ineffective. With it, even heavy responsibility becomes manageable. You begin to lead from depth instead of tension, from conviction instead of comparison. You stop measuring your worth by how fast things are moving or how impressed others seem. You measure it by how well you are showing up, especially when the work feels repetitive, slow, or unseen. There is a quiet confidence that grows here, not arrogance, not bravado, a grounded knowing that you can endure discomfort without abandoning yourself, that you can face uncertainty without scrambling for control, that you can remain steady even when answers take time to arrive, and this steadiness changes how others experience you. People trust those who are internally consistent. They feel safe around those who don't collapse under pressure or inflate under praise. They follow those who are anchored, not anxious. This does not mean you never doubt. It means doubt no longer rules you. It becomes something you observe, not something you obey. The same is true of fear. Fear becomes a signal, not a stop sign. It reminds you that something matters, but it does not get to decide your direction. Over time, you also learn to respect the pace of growth. You stop demanding instant transformation from yourself. You understand that real change is cumulative. It happens through small disciplined choices repeated over long stretches of time. This patience is not passive. It is active trust in the process. You learn to work without needing immediate reassurance, to continue without constant feedback, to stay faithful to your values even when no one is clapping. This is where inner freedom is born. When your effort is no longer dependent on recognition, your energy becomes sustainable, and in this sustainability, meaning deepens. Work becomes more than output. Leadership becomes more than position. Success becomes less about arrival and more about alignment. You begin to experience fulfillment not because everything is easy, but because you are whole. So keep going, not recklessly, not aggressively, but deliberately. Let discipline be an act of self-respect. Let responsibility be a privilege you grow into rather than a burden you resent. Let each day refine you instead of rushing you. There is strength being built in you that does not announce itself. There is clarity forming beneath the noise, and there is purpose unfolding, not through pressure, but through presence. Stay with it. The quiet work is working.